Welcome to Recruiting is No Joke. I am your host, Joe Laugi, the realist recruiter. It is great to be here with you guys. Super excited for this week. We have another amazing guest. So, Tony, welcome to the show. Why don't you give everyone an introduction, who you are, what you do, and who you do it for?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, first of all. Who I am, what I do, and who I do it for. Definitely good questions.
The big three.
Yeah, right. Who I am, I'm Tony, and out here in the San Francisco Bay Area, born and raised here, still here. And what do? I've been in the recruiting space for nearly 20 years.
Wow.
It was a big shift. We're going to go all the way back just for like 5 seconds. Parents owned a Vietnamese restaurant in Menlo Park many decades ago. Thought that was going to be my career. It wasn't. Went into Macy's for 6 years. Thought that was going to be my career. Retail is not my career. I ended that career with Foot Locker, and that was like the nail in the coffin. Like, all right, get me out of here. Love the shoes. Awesome. I love selling it. And then recruiting found me. And so 20 years later, started in the agency world and did that for about 5-6 years, and then corporate ever since.
Very cool. And who are you with right now?
So right now I lead global recruiting for Mission Cloud, which is a recently acquired CDW company.
Very cool. Very cool. So bring me back to, how you fell into recruiting, which I think if I look through the 100+ episodes that I've done, most people say, hey, I fell into recruiting. So I'd love to hear how that happened to you and what it was like and how you got into that agency space. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Recruiting is No Joke. I want to give a special shout out to Hey Milo AI for sponsoring this show. You know how word travels fast when something actually works? Well, recruiters we know have started using Hey Milo AI, and they're already talking about the difference. They've reclaimed back hours that used to vanish into the black hole of initial phone screens, and now they spend their time coaching candidates, refining roles, working with hiring managers, and strategizing growth. In those frantic, high-volume hiring cycles where you got to go through thousands of applicants, the last thing you want to do is awkward, half-baked interviews that tarnish your reputation. Hey Milo's conversational AI consistently delivers smooth, two-way interviews at scale, and that help people remember you for the right reasons. So if you're comparing providers, pick the one that lifts your reputation and brand instead of the one that leaves candidates shaking their heads. Go ahead and book a demo today at heymilo.ai and find out why teams leading rely on Hey Milo. Now back to the show.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, restaurant, retail, that was all with the intent of finishing my computer science degree. And I did that for about a year and a half, 2 years. I was loving retail, got promoted like 10 times, but that's easy when you're making, and this might date me, when you're making $8 an hour as a part-time summer employee. So, 10 promotions later to like $10.50.
Yeah, what's it going right now? It's like $15, $16
I don't
an
know
hour
anymore, but I guarantee you, anyone who has kids on here or is much younger than I am will laugh. Like, $8 an hour was like a good starting salary for retail.
I know. It's wild.
But yeah, I thought, hey, this is the thing I'm going to do. And so I very quickly switched to business administration so I could go to school and work, thinking that would be my career pivot. In hindsight, I probably should have stayed in computer science, but it's fine. I'm happy where I am. But yeah.
But I feel like that even having that interest, though, in computer science for the recruiting that you do, I feel like just having that natural curiosity towards it probably gave you a big competitive edge.
Yeah, I was lucky. I grew up in the Bay Area, but I also had brothers who are 10 and 14 years older. They worked at Sun Microsystems. Everyone remembers that company, Metros of Java, and Cisco in the early days. And so there was always a big, huge tech space in my family. And so I thought computer science was going to be the one. You don't want to see my dogs. And when you can't see me, my dog just decided to moon the whole audience. But
that is amazing. Love it. It's a first, by the way. That's the first in 100 episodes. We've had some cats, but that is a first. So I love that.
It makes you really want to see this podcast. But
what did your brothers think when you got into recruiting? Because I feel like there's like a love-hate relationship in the tech space with the recruiters.
Yeah, they actually were pretty happy with it because it made sense. Because they always thought I was gonna be the smartest kid in the family. I think I am, but at the same time, my career didn't necessarily take me that way. But my brother would bring home this 486 Intel computer and like 50 floppy disks, and you go to college and say, hey, I'm going to do this when I come back in a month. Don't touch it. And I'm like, what do you mean? You can't tell a 8-year-old or 10-year-old, I don't know how old I was, like, don't touch something. So I installed Windows when I was like 8 years old, built my own computer. So I thought that was where I was going to go. And then they saw my career in retail and was like, all right, what are you doing? So
a little bit off track there.
Yeah. I randomly took my cousin to a career fair. She needed a ride. And I was just hanging around during lunch. One of the managing directors for the largest IT staffing firm in the Bay Area came up to me and was like, so what do you do? How are you doing? And it was not an interview at all. And I gave him my background, computer science, built computers, retail. And he's like, dude, you're amazing. You'd be amazing for technical recruiting. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. People get paid to hire other people. Like, I came from retail where I literally went outside the store and had to go like pass flyers out saying, hey, do you want to sell shoes with me during Christmas? You know, and then I'd hire them myself. Like, this whole concept of a middleman doing stuff was crazy. So he said, just come by, take a look. And that was during my Foot Locker stage of like, am I a ref or am I a prison guard? Like, I can't decide. So, and at that point I was working probably 70 hours a week. I was making great money because I was working overtime, double time, 6 days a week, but I was just dying. So all of a sudden it's like, hey, 8 to 5, I got an offer on the spot, hiring developers, which is what I went to school for, help desk, network engineers, which I did on the side with my brother's technology. And then, changed my life. Started recruiting on the technical side, met about 50 different corporate companies. They sucked me into my first corporate role was at AskJeeves.com. So everything I'm saying, I feel like I'm dating myself. But
I remember Ask Jeeves. Ask Jeeves, that was legendary. That was
legendary. 15 years ago. But that's fine. My laser tag nickname when I go with my kids is Old Man, so it works out fine.
Look, I love it. I'm gonna be honest here. You don't look old, so you got that going. They got that going for you. I was gonna ask you. So when you had the 5-year stint, right, in agency, did you know pretty quickly that you were gonna move internally, or I guess like, did you know that, or did something happen? Because, it kind of goes, it seems like around that 5-year mark, it kind of goes either way for people, where some people go, I want to build something. I want to be a part of a company. And then other people are like, no, I just love the agency and I'm going to be a division director or whatever that career path looks like.
What's funny is 5 years is a long time in an agency. And there's definitely some people I met who are still there, who are lifers, who are amazing, amazing people. And it's what they know and they do it well. And I was loving it for 3 or 4 years. It is a grind. It's a challenge because it's there's a leaderboard, more or less. It's a video game. And if you don't have the most spread or the most gross margin or the most consultants, then you want to be the top 5. I was maybe the top 5 twice for a month in 5 years. So I had to get
used. And how many consultants were there, just to give people kind of an idea of the size?
50 on staff, which is crazy.
Wow.
And that's also a grind. It's like so that's how it kind of ended. Was I hit this Apex? That's the name of the IT staffing firm. But I hit this.
How big is Apex? I think that was asking. So you had 50 consultants on the payroll, but like how big was the actual firm that you?
They had about 40, 50 offices across the U.S. Probably upwards of 10,000 consultants at any given time. So it was big. And then being in the Bay Area, big for being an IT staffing firm was even bigger. Yeah. So the opportunity was huge, but the problem for me anyway was you only make as much money as you have staff on your payroll, and in California especially, it's, you try not to have someone on your books for more than 18 months without converting them, and so contractors only contracted for so long. And so in the best case scenario, every year and a half I have to replace everybody. So to maintain my salary, I had to rehire 50 consultants consistently. And it was such a grind. So I loved it. So the pivot would have been, do I do account management? Do I do regional director? Do I do managing director? And those are all options. But even people say recruiting is a sales thing. Back then, for me, I treated it more like marketing, relationship building, and a data game as opposed to a sales game. I could never go all in on the sales part. And the future for agency really is, like, recruiting is the bottom of the totem pole in an agency. So the top of the totem pole is account management sales, and everything beyond that. And that just wasn't me. So, I took an opportunity to get out. Also being in the Bay Area at the time, 15 years ago, it was also Google and Facebook were hiring 100 engineering recruiters every day, contract recruiters.
Wow.
And so the contract recruiting game was huge in the Bay Area, as well as full-time in-house. But you can make more money going on contract than you could full-time. And so I moved over to contract and ended up being, so I fell in love with recruiting in the agency, but I didn't know what it really was until I went in-house. When I went in-house, all of a sudden it was, I can actually talk to the hiring managers. I can meet the CEO. I can influence like the future of the company with who, when, and how we hire. And it created just a whole different, and then recruiting is also that kind of like on the side piece of HR. Like it's almost siloed in a way. You know, it's not fully integrated into HR. It's not fully integrated into the business. You connect with everybody, but it's one of those things where like you can kind of make it your own. And if you screw up, it doesn't ruin someone's payroll. So, but at the same time, we don't fire anybody. So my job is to give people money, make them happy, make the company successful. And none of the stuff I do potentially breaks anything else big time. And so I could play with TA tools. I could do whatever I want with ATSs. Let's try LinkedIn today. Let's try Hot Jobs tomorrow, like whatever. It was just a fun.
Hot Jobs.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, because around that time too, that was like where
that was
like
it.
the job boards would just.
That's how you found people. Hot Jobs, Monster, Dice, and
Career Builders in there.
Yeah. LinkedIn was about $1 million, and so you share one license with 20 people. So, but
I just heard that the prices are going up too. I saw some post where it was like, it's like went from like, it's like a 700% price increase. That's what the post said. It seems like clickbait, but like, man, they are getting pricey.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's totally untrue. I wouldn't be. The one thing I've tried to do in the last, I mean, this is a pivot, and we can pivot back later. I mean, we can pivot to this more later. I'll just touch on it for 5 seconds. But for sure, in the 10 years I've negotiated with LinkedIn, I've had LinkedIn everywhere I've gone, unlimited, corporate, enterprise, startup. And the one thing I can never, ever, ever have figured out, I've had spreadsheets and everything trying to and asking peers, what is your pricing model? And I've taken feedback from people exactly the same size in exactly the same city with exactly the same team. And it could be like 20, 30, 40, 100K difference. So I have no idea.
Yeah, but they'll throw in a visit to Talent Connect. So it's a little worth it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You get to go to the big party. It's worth it.
Again, 10 years ago, the time Talent Connect was, they shut down Disneyland and we hung out there all night. Today, it's like, come have dinner with us. I'm like, all right, I like food, but I want to go to Disneyland. So,
well, no, they got the private concerts and stuff. It's true. I don't think I feel like within the recruitment space, there's like this weird love-hate anyway with like just tech in general. Like no one likes their ATS unless they just got a new one. And once they get the new ATS, they love it for a little bit, and then there's something new. And then it's like everybody's just like, oh, LinkedIn. But secretly, it's like everybody has to have LinkedIn. They've done a great job, I guess.
Well, it's funny because every year, without a doubt, someone will bring up the thread of, hey, what's the LinkedIn alternative? Every year for as long as I've been recruiting. And every year there's no good answer, except for this year where someone the other week just started a thread of how many people are considering not renewing their LinkedIn contract. And surprisingly, half of the people said, I'm either going to drop it or go down to a la carte and maybe have just one license. And that's because
the proof for it will be like, I want to, I don't know. I want to see that.
I want to see it. Well. And I think people are afraid to pull the trigger, but I mean, you look at Gem and Ashby and even Seek Out and Find Them and all these tools where AI and sourcing finally, I've seen it for ages. Before it was AI, it was machine learning. Before machine learning, it was just keyword mapping and or just source lists. Here's one that's fun. I remember at one point I used to hire Vsauce out of Vietnam, and it was like for pennies, and I'd wake up every morning and they'd give me a spreadsheet of like 500 names, and that was my LinkedIn at the time. Was I just paid someone to just go find profiles for me.
How much value do you think there is though? Because I totally agree. From like just there's just so much data on all of us that it's like finding information on people, but then there's like what I've heard that a lot of people are attached to with LinkedIn is they still get decent or better responses percentage-wise from in-mails than they do from emails, or they're like worried about now screwing up their email domain because they're spamming people, and obviously
Yeah.
with in-mails, okay, you get penalized if you mess up that threshold. But what's your thought with that? Because it seems to be like, yeah, you could get the information somewhere else, but then it's like that in-mail there's still some weird like value there.
Yeah.
So I don't know like what your thought is at long
I totally
term
agree.
with that.
That was someone's comment is, I mean, what are they at now? 1 billion people on their platform.
Yeah, it's like over 1 billion. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's a valid argument. And someone had said something that really connected with me was, how long has it been now? Over 10 years, 1 billion people have just been trained for a decade. My nephews who just started, one of them just entered the workforce, graduated school. Another one's in college now. My daughter's 12 and her friends and their older siblings are all trying to, like, it's funny now, like high school and college, one of the things they teach you now on the career side,
Create a LinkedIn.
is create a LinkedIn profile. And if the earlier you do it, the better it is. And so,
well, because I think you got to look like on like TikTok, for example. I'm on that platform all the time. I'd imagine like that age group is probably into that type of the video content, the short form content. So whether it's TikTok, Instagram, with the reels, that type of content is winning. And if you look at a lot of the career coaches, the advice that's out there and the advice that goes viral, there are a lot of people who are saying, hey, it's essential. You need to have a brand. You need to have a personal brand, and LinkedIn is the place to go. And that's the information that's going out there. And people are even saying, oh, well, the resume is dead. So like you have to be on LinkedIn.
No, I think it's
interesting.
It's definitely a staple. And we've been trained and conditioned that LinkedIn is the place to go. And so I think people are, and so someone had mentioned like people are just trained to find and respond to in-mails. And I'd argue that's like 50-50. Like you are trained to be hypersensitive to your in-mails and your LinkedIn if you are thinking about looking for a job. But if you're happily in your job, I've talked to random people in my current company. It's like, I don't look at LinkedIn unless I actually need to, and
well,
so
does LinkedIn email also go to your email though too?
It does, but so does a connection request. And so it's one of those things now where I feel like if you have a Gem, Ashby, Seek Out, Find Them, or whatever, and it's helping you source candidates and it sends you to their LinkedIn, I would just send a message with my LinkedIn request saying, hey, connect with me. By the way, you look amazing. I have a role. I think messages are better nowadays. But yeah, do I need a LinkedIn recruiter search license? I feel like I need job postings because they made a new rule to try to weed out fake companies and fake accounts where if they won't allow you to post a job for free unless you pay for something on LinkedIn. And so I'd probably still have job postings. I might have one license just so I can keep my projects and whatnot. And right now my team also have LinkedIn licenses, but you look at the usage and they do still use in-mails, but am I going to pay $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 per license just for in-mails and not the search? Like maybe LinkedIn needs to adjust and say, hey, maybe we have a messaging box that can reach any degree network and less search licenses instead of bundling the two together and forcing you to buy both. They probably won't because that's the only thing they're going to make money. But
well, it seems like they're also really pushing. I noticed recently, again, just being a content creator on the platform at the level that I'm at, I'm just always looking at the algorithm, always looking at what other creators are doing, more so in like the B2B creator, like the influencer space, if you want to call it that. And it seems like they're really, really pushing now to bring influencers from TikTok and Instagram. And like, I've seen a lot more musicians, sports people. I think there was that Cannes event recently, which I don't even really know a ton about, but LinkedIn sponsored that. And so they're definitely making an effort to become a creator platform as well. So I don't know whether they're maybe anticipating going, all right, we need to just diversify our revenue from purely recruit. Well, it's not purely recruit, but we need to start going down this creator path and promotions and paid ads because we might lose some business on the recruitment side.
No, agreed. And they're next two big products. I mean, I think recruiting. Okay, I'm totally making this up. I'm gonna guesstimate at least 2x over these other two, but it's still a big audience. Sales Navigator and LinkedIn Learning, and again, all the workforce coming in are the Instagram, TikTok generation. And so I think they're diversifying to attract people. But I think fundamentally for me right now, hiring, I haven't seen anything moving away from like, at least from a recruiter perspective. Maybe this will be in the next 5 or 10 years, but am I going to review your LinkedIn short form videos as your resume, or am I going to still need a resume or a profile? I think for now, I still need some kind of piece of paper with your experience on it to do this recruiting process. But I think the short form will attract people to the brand, to the company, to your profile to then apply. But you're still going to need a LinkedIn profile and a resume for now.
Yeah. No, 100%. I'm curious. I always ask this. I like to try and ask this with guests. For any of the job seekers who are out there, which is a lot of recruiters who are looking for jobs. As I've talked to 5 HR leaders who are kind of on the market this week and looking to navigate the job search. And obviously it's competitive. So I'm curious from your standpoint, are there any kind of glaring mistakes you're seeing right now, or just things that you would, if someone's out there looking, like what's your kind of advice, and what are some of the things that you're seeing people do right now that's not helping them when it comes to just standing out on a resume? And like, what do you train your recruiting team to look for in resumes?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm saying training my recruiters for anything. I'm trying to instead train candidates, which is hard. I mean, probably easier to train a small group of people to look at a larger pool. But in reality, I think the challenge is I can't change their natural behavior. Recruiters, I can try to push them to like dig in deeper on like what's the last role, what do they really do, look at their achievements, which are also important. But at the end of the day, I think the standing issue is there's volume. Even with AI helping you potentially screen resumes now or rank resumes, at the end of the day, like it'll rank a resume, but it'll still give you something to look at. Whether you're Tinder swiping left or right in Greenhouse with 200 profiles, or AI said, look at these first 5. In either situation, it's like, look at this resume. And I think that natural recruiter's behavior is, you give me something to look at, I am going to spend 5 seconds on it. And if I'm not sucked into that resume in the first 5 seconds, then I'm, the next, swipe left, swipe right.
Where do you think the guys go with a resume? Like, where do you think recruiters focus? Do you think it's different?
100%.
Kind of trained the same way.
Company name and title, job title. And company name is not necessarily like pedigree, like, hey, I worked at Google, I'm amazing. I think it's just, depending on what company you work at, I think there's a competitors list. There's people who are in similar industries, like they're just looking for a connection. But working at Signore's Pizza isn't necessarily a negative, but working at Google and you're at OpenAI could be like, that could be a plus for that role. It could be a negative for that role. So I think look at company first and then job title. And then the advice I give all job seekers is no one gives an F about your job title, to be honest. Like they care about your job title, but they don't care that it matches some background check or some HR validation. Like your job title is your headline. Don't lie. But at the same time, senior product manager is boring. Software engineer is boring. Like, and my 5-second glance is going to be like, great, software engineer. But if you, and I'm not saying make something up like JavaScript Ninja, Jedi Master, but definitely like a senior product manager, business operations strategist, or a full stack engineer solving integration problems. Like give me a headline that sucks me into the rest of your resume, and then I'm going to spend more time on it. And that's what's going to attract the recruiter is like, I don't want you to change your titles to something like crazy, like the ninja example, because then you're throwing off the algorithm. Like guaranteed something is probably processing something somewhere. And so you don't want to change your keyword so much that you get excluded because they don't know what you're doing. But you also don't want to be so boring that you look like everybody else. Like just anyone on this call.
It's funny, man. That's such good advice, because it's probably one of the first times I've heard somebody suggesting that, but it makes a ton of sense. Because I will say that the resume is like a marketing document, right? It's like the goal of the resume is to get a call, not to land a job. You're just trying to land a screening call.
Yeah, and if anyone's ever been at a university career fair before, which I appreciate it, I love the people I meet, but at the same time, I'm going to be honest with every single intern listening, is every single one of your resumes look alike. Like I get a pile of 400 people, and everyone took the same courses, did the same projects, have the same intern title, and I'm like, you all look the same on paper, and so don't look the same. What's different? And if everyone's worried about like, well, what if they call my company and let's say you're trying to pivot, and it's like, I'm a senior product manager with emphasis on customer success, and I'm trying to get a customer success job, but clearly I was a product manager. I'm like, as long as you're in the ballpark, any HR or background check company validating your title isn't going to care if it's within the realm. If you're saying you're the CEO, but you're really the janitor,
totally.
Then that's a background issue. That's the whole point of the background, is to catch you in a lie. But if it's anywhere in the ballpark of full stack developer, engineer, product manager, whatever, like, it just doesn't matter. They just care about that you worked there and the date you worked and you did most of the things you said you did. But if you were a product manager, but you care, or if you're an engineer and you cared more about product, or if you were a financial analyst, but you cared more about the sales renewals, and that's what you did to some degree, well, then, and that's a job you want next, well, then put that in your title. Because I think that's the challenge with today's market, is recruiters don't have time to connect the dots. If you had some sales experience there, some customer service experience there, some resale there, some account management there, and you're applying for an account manager role, but you want me to put all the pieces together, I'm not going to do that. Like, you need to tell me, why are you an account manager? What about your experience in the past is related to that role? Suck me into your title and make me see the progression of your career towards this role. Don't make me put the pieces together, because as a recruiter, I'm the gatekeeper, and I'm not by choice, and I'm not trying to push you out of the pool, but I have potentially 100 other people to look at, and so attract.
I was going to ask you, what are you seeing as far? And number one, are you guys fully remote? Are you in the office? Okay, so you're fully remote. Obviously, still really high in demand for fully remote positions for job seekers. But what's like an applicant flow on a typical job? And let's say you post a new job that's fully remote, software engineer role. How many applicants are you getting in a 24-hour window? At
least 200. I mean, fairness, again, it's probably remote. At least 200 in 24 hours. We have to shut off jobs within a week, if not sooner. So let's get to 400. We're just doing a disservice to everyone applying.
And are you pretty much going through every resume?
We try to, and at first we were committed to it. But being honest, like 400 people for one recruiter, it's just not humanly possible to.
And you're putting parameters on there, right? Like, hey, you got to be in the U.S. or you got to have if there's a degree requirement or whatever type of requirement.
Yeah. There's definitely requirements in there. Sometimes we put knockout questions. Sometimes we don't, just to get the applicant flow. But the reality is, even if I wanted to look at all 400, if I get to 10 viable candidates in an hour or a day, then like, what's the point? Like, so, and that's in the first 100 batch. By the time I get to batch 200, it's like, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to give the hiring manager another 10 resumes? He only needs one hire. So, or he or she. And so it's one of those situations, like, I got to be strategic about how I manage the recruiting process as well, because the hiring manager may say yes to all 20 resumes. And now what? They got 20 phone screens. I got 20 phone screens. We got at least 10 panel interviews. So we got to be smart about how much time we're committing to this search. And if there's already 5 to 10 viable candidates, you stop there and you see it through. And if it doesn't work out, then you go to batch 2 and go back to your pool, which definitely happens. But I'm not going to waste 20 phone screens on potentially something that could hire in 3. So then I'll turn it off. So granted, it's a remote use case. But let's say we did account executives and we purposely put them, even though it's still remote, we put them in they have to be in certain metros because of the clients they support. And again, and that's sales. So it's a different ballgame, but same situation is I'd get 100 applicants in an hour per city. And so the market today is still very, in my opinion, unless it's a really niche role, it's still very supply heavy. And
I just call it brutal for a job seeker. And it's brutal, right? Because it's
always brutal, but yeah.
And now it's like,
it's terrible.
Yeah, it's like you have to try. We had someone on the podcast recently that was like, I got a lot of interviews through my network, but then they landed the job through applying. So it's very hard to just know. It's just to rely on one strategy. I feel like you have to do a lot of different things. Like you said, you got to get creative. You got to know how to stand out. I guess one of the things that's been coming up a lot, particularly with remote first companies, we're seeing a lot more of the rise of like fake candidates. What's your experience with that, and like how are you guys approaching that problem specifically? Because I feel like it's one that's coming up more and more and more. And maybe just talk a little bit about like what you're seeing with that and how that's even impacting what candidates are maybe feeling on the other side as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely out there. We've been lucky that it was on a rise at the end of last year, in my opinion. And we started seeing a few where a lot of resumes looked alike. And so that's where the one advice I gave to my recruiters at the time when we were on Lever, and we're on Gem now. And at the time, you had to to find what you wanted, you got to go through everybody. And so it was easier then. And the advice was, hey, I don't need you to evaluate 400 resumes, but let's do a quick spot check. Go through as many as you can just to make sure you're not seeing any visual trends. And if resumes look exactly like same companies, if something smelled wrong, too simple, it's like, oh, I've seen that before. That's usually either one, a fake resume, or two, that was also end of the last year was also the rise of like the AI auto applier. And so not that those are negative candidates, but we tried to interview a few and their experience wasn't the same as their resume. So they weren't fake. They just used a tool that didn't know you well enough and didn't have any moral boundaries to like over keyword your experience into something that you didn't do.
Well, a lot of the tools now, they're matching based on the job description versus trying to, and I've worked pretty closely with one of these companies, and my advice was trying as much as you can, get as much information from the candidate of like what's their accomplishments, what are the projects they've worked on, what's the work they've actually done, almost create like a bank of experience that could be matched then to what the job description's asking. And then also really recommending people not to put it on like the autopilot, but to actually pick the jobs themselves. Because I like the idea of like, I mean, going through a manual application process, it sucks. I'd much rather have like an autofill option where it's just like,
and that's the feature.
Yeah, it's like that to me makes sense. But then obviously it's so hard from a consumer perspective because the consumer is going to go, I just hate the whole thing. Just put it on auto apply, send me the interviews. But to me, that's where you get into the spam issue for companies. And it's like, if you don't know what companies you're even applying to, when they call you back, if the question is, well, what do you know about us? Or, why do you want to work for us? Then you just be scrambling in that moment. Go, wait a minute, who are you? Like, cool. You've had that probably where you call someone, they're like, wait, 100%. What company? You're like,
even if you
just applied,
sprayed and prayed, even without AI and you applied to 100 jobs, like in my opinion, that's a behavioral user error where it's like, in between you applying to 1,000 roles and not knowing who they are to getting an interview, somewhere in the middle, someone had to communicate with you like, hey, we're from Acme. We really like you. Like that's on you, in my opinion, as a candidate to not spend at least 5 minutes doing some research on who is this person? What is this company? All right, let's do this phone call.
Is that inexcusable nowadays, do you think, with just how accessible information is? ChatGPT, AI, like, is it inexcusable? You get that, it's just like automatically like, no, we just can't.
I mean, you don't need it. If you're applying for a accounting role at my AWS consulting partner company, do I expect you to know what AWS is in the cloud space? I mean, I think you should know. I think everyone in the world should know what cloud is, but should you? Am I going to ding you for not knowing what AWS and how our employees work? No, but I would have expected you to at least go to our website. And so that'd be my question is, hey, what do you know about us? And as long as they say like, hey, went to your website, looked at your LinkedIn, checked out your Glassdoor or something, where just at least if you lied to me and you made it seem like you looked at something. The funniest thing is when a candidate tells me, no, I don't know you. It's like when there's some candidates out there and my recruiters we have a fun channel where we post like if you don't have one in your recruiting group, everyone needs one where you just need a venting channel of just like the dumbest stuff that happens that you just copy and paste. And one of my recruiters just the other day, it's like, I asked them, do you know anything about our company? And they said, no, didn't look it up. Don't know who you are. This invite came up and I just joined it. I'm like, wow, you are really selling yourself.
The one that got me, I was doing a project manager position for a construction company that did masonry reconstructions. It's super niche, but it was right at the beginning of COVID. And I put project manager was a title, and I had like 100 IT project managers apply to the job because it was like right when the furloughs were starting. And then I called one of the guys, and like I just did it just because I had nothing better to do because I was agency. I was like, all right, you apply to this job. And he said, which one? And I was like, it's a project manager role. And he went into his experience. I was like, this is for masonry restoration. He's like, what's masonry? What does that mean? And I'm like, it's construction. And it was kind of one of those things where in general, people just don't read, right? And so it's like people aren't reading job descriptions, and I get that. But how often are you seeing people show up like that? Like, is it a regular occurrence, or it's just once in a while? Like most people have an idea who they're interviewing.
Yeah, nowadays it's far and few between. I'm also the attitude of cheating, a good way with candidates, in the sense of I want you to get the job. I also want you to be the best candidate, but I think it's stupid that hiring managers expect candidates to read your mind. Like, let's say in a technical assessment, or an example, I had a senior leader who said, hey, during the whole interview process, and this is the final stage of their executive, this is normally a given. Like 90% of the people who get to this stage, you're the only person at this stage, you're going to get the job.
It's like a token interview stage.
Meet the executive. My boss's boss's boss, who you never meet again. Actually. But in this one interview, the candidate wore a t-shirt, which is not a negative, that's not for me anyway, but it was just a stack of things that added up to, and it was for a customer facing role. So they wore a t-shirt to an interview with an executive. Their Zoom was only at the top of their forehead, or
oh man,
and so it's like there's like this much white space. Or on this podcast, no one can see my hands. Let's just assume like 90% of your screen is like white space above your head, or they're super zoomed out and their head is like the little. And the executive said no, but he couldn't get past the soft behaviors to actually focus on the hard skills. And so, but in my opinion though, like I get it, but at the same time, I would have probably just stopped the interview and be like, hey, this is a customer facing role, and here are my expectations for people who work on my team. I need you to be front and center. I need your video on. I need you to look professional. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Let's start this interview over again. And then try to impress me. And so I think there's a lot of things that interviews assume people should know when they're perfectly coachable moments. I can't teach you JavaScript overnight, but I can definitely teach you to turn your camera on. Like if that's an expectation. So I
think it's that whole interview, like the best person doesn't get the job, right? It's like the person who interviews the best, but it's like, how often have we hired, like, I just think about the amount of times we've just had, oh, it was an amazing interview. This person is, they're the best. And it's like 3 months later, they're on a pip because they weren't actually that great. It's just, they were just good at interviewing.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but I think work today, especially in this virtual-ish hybrid remote world, everybody Googles and ChatGPTs everything now. And so, in my opinion, it's up to you to fail. If you get a job and you can't figure out how to do the job or show up, then that's 100% on you. Like, yes, some things need more experience and more skills, but there's so much information now today that for you to screw up, you have to have chosen not to show up or give your best or try. And so what
That's
I do
such a good point.
With candidates, I cheat. I tell them exactly what to expect. Like, hey, here are my Zoom etiquette expectations that the leader's looking for. If it's a panel, we call it test drive, or if it's a code pair exercise, I try not to tell them exactly the question, so they pre-Google it. But I give them as much information like, hey, you're gonna do a coding challenge about REST APIs with JavaScript and Python, and if they're going to focus on your design structures or design skills and data structures, and if they take all the information and still fail, then they definitely shouldn't get the job. But if they can pre-research all that stuff and show up like a boss to the interview, well, then you've earned it, in my opinion, and so,
I love that.
So that's how I usually approach recruiting. And that's how not every recruiter is the same, but also I challenge candidates, like, don't be afraid to ask questions. What are you going to ask me? What's the expectation? How do I show up to the best for this interview? And your recruiters are your partners. They're not your hiring manager. Like, if they can't give you the answer, they can't give you the answer. But why wouldn't they give you some advice on how to win this interview? That's our job.
Well, even as agency recruiter, I mean, you mentioned that you didn't have much interaction with hiring managers, but which I think happens a lot in contract space. But if I'm doing a permanent placement for a leader, I'm going to have a good relationship with the hiring manager. And so one of the things I will prep people on is like the soft skills. Like, all right, if I know the hiring manager is 3-piece suit because it's their financial services and that's the expectation, I'll prep them on that and give them as much advice I can. Hey, this person is, a type A personality. Like, this is what they're looking for. Because at the end of the day, also they might go, oh, that's it. I don't even want to work with someone who's like that as well. But I think it's like you said, I don't know how many people are asking recruiters that. And then obviously if you ask your recruiter, like, well, who am I interviewing with? What, what are they like? Can you give me some inside information? Obviously without giving like, here's the 10 questions they're going to ask you.
Yeah.
It's just helping people out. And it's also just realizing that, like, I think interviews for most people outside of salespeople is probably the most exposure that they will have to like having to sell themselves.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable. They're afraid of rejection, and people get nervous at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
understanding that and having empathy is huge as well. And I know I've heard people be like, well, I just want them to show up, as themselves. But it's like, well, in work, we don't actually show up as ourselves.
No.
We show up as a corporate version of ourselves, and there's elements of us, but it's like we look at the company culture and you kind of show up as the company culture is, because if everyone's wearing a suit, you're not going to be wearing a t-shirt. So there's those things where I think as recruiters, we could help out a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm not going to show you my TikTok feed, during my interview. Like, you probably don't even want to see that. I mean, not me in it, but
it's just, yeah.
No, I've sometimes as a recruiter, I've gone too deep and I'm like, wow, I wish I could unsee some of the stuff because I really want to hire you. I've gone to people's Twitter feeds before and Instagram and whatever, and political this or flag burning that. I'm like, wow, I really wish I didn't see that.
Oh, it's got to be crazy. Yeah. I mean, this is it. How often do you think hiring managers are doing? Like, how much research are hiring managers doing on people? Are they doing more nowadays or less?
What's funny is years ago, I think hiring managers, in my opinion, I mean, every company is different. But from my own experience, I felt like hiring managers my hiring managers used to be more invested or cared more about each hire. Maybe, I think there's been a shift. I'll put it that way. Is again, this is only my experience in the companies that I work for. But years ago, I feel like the shift was hiring managers and departments own their headcount. And so they are 100% accountable. We were very transactional. As recruiters. And so the candidate flow is on us. And if we don't have the candidates, we're failing. But at the end of the day, a bad hire, we're not accountable for. And that hiring manager's future is dependent on a good hire. And so I've hired managers in the past who are much more invested in like, hey, check out Jane's Facebook. I just found it. And I'm like, I don't want to see this. How was the interview? Today, I feel like there's been a shift more towards TA being more strategic. And so we're still not necessarily accountable. Like, a bad hire gets fired in 90 days is not our fault, but at the same time, we're now measuring quality. We're a headcount strategy partner. I'm seeing more recruiters today tell a hiring manager or partner or strategize like, hey, how are we going to hire this role? How do you want to approach this? What makes sense? And also,
it's a lot more of having a business case nowadays, and like understanding that ROI and the data, and you got to be a lot more tech savvy nowadays.
Yeah, and we have all the data. Hey, it takes you 5 interviews to get to an offer, and then we tell them stuff too, like, hey, I can't make an offer unless you do these things. You're telling them you want to pay that person $200K. My comp range is $150. I think hiring managers now start slowly like feeling like they don't control their own hiring to a certain degree, but they're still accountable. But so in this new like partnership era where there's more data and strategy on the TA side, I'm seeing hiring managers not less invested, but they're more focused on the process and doing the stuff we tell them to do to get through to the end versus like having their own process and their own willy-nilly whatever. And so therefore they're doing their own research and they're, social media searching their own candidates. Like I'm seeing almost none of that lately, unless I tell them to go look.
Interesting. Well, last question, because I know we're wrapping up here. We're going a little bit over on time, but advice for recruiters right now in terms of, obviously, it's still continuing to see layoffs. We're still seeing the market is uncertain in a lot of areas, and demand for just recruitment in general seems to be lower than it has been in the past, let's say. If you were looking at recruiters that want to stay relevant over the next few years, like what's your advice to just as being a talent leader? Obviously, you're talking to leaders in your companies you've worked with, you've got a good network. What's your advice for recruiters to stay relevant over this next period of time? And what would you have them focus on?
This is probably a broken record at this point for 2025. But it's AI, but not, I don't know. I don't know if this is the same or different than what people suggest, but for me anyway, when I say AI, I don't mean like AI is going to replace you. I mean, it could. Here's my attitude. I would love for AI to replace all my recruiters. I would love to get to a point where there's almost zero recruiters. Everything's automated except for maybe the offer process. There definitely needs to be a human touch. But the thing that I screw up the most personally is trying to do Google Calendar and schedule 5 people within like a 2 hour time frame, and to make sure that and what's the time zone, and did I get the role right, what's the and so scheduling, moving people from stage to stage, writing write-ups, taking notes, creating scorecards, like all this stuff is such a pain in the butt, and it's necessary and it's important, and I'll do the job, but there are tools now that can help make your words smarter, summarize it for you, schedule for you, make recommendations for questions for the interview, and then make recommendations on what data to look for. They can see your trends that you can't find. If I were to give them 50 spreadsheets and 1,000 resumes and a bunch of scorecards and say, hey, ChatGPT, find me a trend in all this junk, it would give me 100 suggestions, where imagine me going through 1,000 scorecards, 100, tens of thousands of resumes, whatever, and I'm reading it one for one. Like by the time I get to page 3, I'm ready to turn on Netflix, so I want technology to replace us, but I want the people it's replacing to have new valuable roles in the process. And so I'm not saying fire.
Do you think people are already thinking about like what those roles look like, or do you 100%. Think it would still? Okay, yeah, okay.
I think for now, at least for the next 2 or 3 years, in my opinion, there'll probably still be coordinators and recruiters. But I'm surprised if your recruiter slowly starts shifting into, I am now a Gen AI prompt expert, because to create a job description, to create interview questions, to review a pool of people, I need to train or tell my whatever software, I am looking for a blah, 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 doing XXX, XYZ on, in X location. Like you're telling it what to look for, and it will scour the internet and your database to put those pieces together for you. So someone who is really good at prompts, really good at programming AI to do the work for you. If you were ever allergic to technology as a recruiter, you better get unallergic. I've known a lot of recruiters who totally got away with being purely sales-y. And today,
that's how people get into the business, we're people. And then you could in the past build a career just being really good with being people. I think that still is a valuable skill without a doubt, but you just cannot ignore like that rec ops, like understanding the systems you're working with, understanding how to put together scalable processes. And at the end of the day, that's what all business leaders are talking about. How do you get more done with less, and how are you implementing technology to automate, and so we can scale this process with less people? And it's like, and if you're not, it's that you can't just now say, oh, well, I'm checked out, I don't even want to know about that.
It's I'm just going to do my calls and make an offer.
You can't say that anymore because they'll just go, well, what do you mean? And then you have to, but at the same time, if you said, hey, actually, we're not going to make any changes, but you came from then this is why, and I've actually done the work, then I think that the people will listen. But it just seems like with stakeholders nowadays, there's so much pressure around what are we doing with this technology? And if you're just coming up empty-handed, I think you're going to be in a tough place pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, that's my attitude is, anyone in the recruiting space on this call, and even candidates, it's like, shift your thinking, come to the table prepared, where you're already thinking about like, hey, and you don't need to have the answers, but what you should know is how you do your job. And I think a lot of people out there just do the job to do the job. And my challenge to everyone is take an hour one day and write out your entire process. What tools do you touch? How many emails do you do? How much time do you spend every day doing whatever? What apps, even just, alt tab or look at recent apps and say, hey, I use Slack for 50% of the day today. I use Gmail or Chrome for 20% of the day. I was on LinkedIn for 80% of the day, and just write all that out and then think about, well, how do these things connect? And is there a way to automate it? Like, so I searched 50 profiles on LinkedIn Recruiter today, and I moved 4 of them into a project because there's been an automated way to do that for you. Mm-hmm. If LinkedIn or Gem or Seek Out or Find Them knew exactly what you wanted, and you gave them a bunch of profiles, would have done the same job for you in 5 seconds versus 5 hours. And if you start thinking that way, then I think you're set up for the future. You're now a recruiter and a talent AI strategist. You are a recruiting coordinator, scheduling administrator. You're a systems administrator for TA tools. That's the future, I think, of our roles. But also, I think businesses, if your executive isn't already thinking this way, they will at some point. They will. Yeah. Or you need to teach them not just the automation part, but what is my role? And if their company thinks of you as a transactional partner, I guarantee at some point they're going to realize, oh crap, Joel, you got 10 roles right now. I mean, if on average each salary is $100K, that means I just made you responsible for $1 million of our money. Like, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean when all of a sudden you, one person, is responsible for $1 million+ of company money, and to potentially generate $3 million from that $1 million you spend? And so all of a sudden, if you realize that that's your role in the company, to go spend $1 million+ to hopefully go make the company $3 million+, and the hires that you make, and all of a sudden your job is like way bigger than it is. And so how do you approach that job? If I was responsible for $1 million at my company in salary, I'm going to be careful, smart, strategic, data driven, and automate the shit out of it. So
I love that. Well, look, I know we over time, this has been a jam-packed episode with a ton of value. Tony, where can people connect with you? Where's the best place to find you? And where can people see what you're working on?
LinkedIn's the best to find me quick. Just -- Tony K. Lee, 1E, TonyKle. But I'm also in a bunch of different recruiting groups and HR Slack groups. So find me anywhere. Silo, Hire Community, Startup Experts, Resources for Humans, Good Time Gurus. I'm in all of it. Just trying to. I think the one final advice I have for anybody is find that community. The community is gonna help you grow and feel like this job keep you sane.
I love it. Well, Tony, thanks so much for spending time with us this week. Guys, if you reach out to Tony, I always say be patient. He's not living on LinkedIn like I am all the time. But just tell him that you heard him on the show. And as always, we'll be back next week with another great guest bringing a ton of value. So if you want to be involved in the show, you can reach out to me. Find me at www.therealistrecruiter.com. Until next week, guys, have a good one. And Tony, thanks so much again.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.